Now, following on from Advanced Warfare, my interest in the Call of Duty franchise really had dipped, with it being a combination of my lack of enjoyment of Advanced Warfare and the 3D movement it introduced, and the really poor state that Black Ops 2 had been on the PlayStation 3 console, made me really uninterested in what Treyarch would have to offer. But as it was, when the reveals came round and then eventually playing the open beta for this game, my opinions were changed. So how did this game stack up? Was it the game that revived the Call of Duty franchise for me? And what made me change my mind about getting it? We'll be covering all of my thoughts on it as I revisit Black Ops 3. Hi there everyone, I'm the guy with no game attack, and rather unusually, I won't be starting out with the single player of this game. This is the only Call of Duty game that I've ever purchased where I haven't played the campaign. I played the first couple of missions when I first got it, and it really didn't scream out to me. There was nothing that dragged me in. It really just kind of felt meh to me. There was nothing that stood out and made me think, yeah, I really want to play this. This game was one that I really only bought for the multiplayer for the first time. And that is kind of unusual in the series. In pretty much every game I play, regardless of whether it's multiplayer or single player, I will always play the single player campaign if there is one on offer. But this game just never captured that. But that being said, that wasn't the reason I was getting this. Now, as I said coming into this, my thoughts on the game were pretty low. I had no interest in buying it because of the awful state Black Ops 2 was on the PlayStation 3. It was laggy, and the support for the game really felt terrible for PlayStation 3 users. So my opinions towards Treyarch were really low. But then the reveals started coming out. You had the Back in Black trailer, and then you had the multiplayer reveal, and it started to build intrigue. I started to actually get really excited for the game, which had me feeling conflicted because the trailers, as they are supposed to, made me feel excited about trying this game. But I also felt conflicted because I knew what Black Ops 2 was like, and I thought that I didn't want to just get sucked in again. But then the game was properly revealed, shown to have 3D movement, which didn't quite float my boat. But then, for the first time in Call of Duty's history, there was not only an open beta, but one that all players could access. So I tried my hand at the game, and I was sucked in immediately. The 3D movement seemed to fit quite well in the game, and the gunplay was crisp as ever, but more importantly, the game's connectivity was greatly improved. The hit registration felt good. It felt miles better than anything I'd seen in Black Ops 2 and was a step above Advanced Warfare, whilst also not having the insta-melt qualities of COD Ghosts. It actually felt like a really satisfying game to play. And so in the end, I did end up picking it up. And for the most part, I actually really enjoyed playing it. It's one of the games that is really satisfying to play. The gunplay in this is still one of the best in any Call of Duty game. For me, it comes a close second behind Modern Warfare 2019, partly because Modern Warfare had slightly more realistic gunplay, it had more recoil, and that made it feel more satisfying. But that being said, the Black Ops 3 gunplay was phenomenal. Now, the guns didn't have huge amounts of recoil, but when you combine the way they performed with the animations and the gun sounds, it really just felt satisfying. You get weapons like the Man of War, which just sound beefy, and it makes them really satisfying to use. And what's more, for the most part, the gun balance in this game was actually pretty good. The guns all felt distinct from each other, they had very unique traits. Apart from outliers like the 205 Brecci shotgun and the M8A7 assault rifle, the guns seemed really well balanced and they had their own niches, and it was a really fun meta to play in. And especially with the changes to the prestiging system as well as the introduction of dark matter camo, you found there was a lot of weapon variety that players were using because a lot of players were just using all the guns to try and get all the unlocks, which really was unique in a Call of Duty, especially when you look back at them now and the more recent entries. Players optimise the hell out of the games. As has been mentioned by Sir Swag on his videos a number of times, players will optimise the fun out of games. But in this game, that didn't really happen. And the thing I think I remember most fondly about this game was actually just that it kind of revived some positive spirit in the community. This game generated hype unlike any we'd seen on this generation of consoles. It really probably was the most hype the community had been since Black Ops 2, even though I disagree with them on that. But the overwhelming positive sentiment really was fantastic, and it made it fun to play because other people were enjoying it. And when you went onto YouTube and watched other people's videos, when I was watching people like Apocalypse and Eddie the Chump, there was general positivity around the game which just hadn't been there for a good couple of years. And that was fantastic, and it just meant that as well as having a satisfying game to play, the positive sentiments just made the enjoyment even higher. However, I was aware of some of the flaws of this game, even when I came back to revisit in 2021. This mainly being that whilst the netcode and the hit registration was greatly improved, it still suffers from a feature which I'm not sure whether I should refer to it as Treyarch Lag or just Call of Duty lag. It's one of those moments where you'll be going through, you'll have gunfight after gunfight, and it'll feel fine, the hit registration feels on point, and then out of nowhere there is someone who rounds a corner and you die in maybe 1 or 2 frames and you never had a chance to respond. I mean, I had moments where I suddenly see an enemy and then I'm just dead. I don't see any muzzle flash or anything to indicate that they actually started shooting at me. Their shots just instantly connect and I'm dead. Now this also wasn't helped because they added attachments like high caliber in, which gave you extra headshot damage, which did mean you sometimes had melty headshots. But it was just this aspect of the game was something that still frustrated me. You'd be on a little streak, you'd be getting into a rhythm, and all of a sudden deleted by something that you really had no chance to respond to. Also, kind of like Black Ops 2, I don't know whether they changed the field of view for Treyarch games, but you get so many moments where you miss someone because they are just outside of your field of view, and especially in a 3D movement game, that's even more frustrating because there's just that much more space that a player can occupy that you just physically can't see. And that also being the main other criticism I have with this game when I revisit it, and even when I was playing it originally, was the 3D movement and the mechanics of it. Whilst it was satisfying and it added something a bit different to Advanced Warfare and other Call of Duty games, it's not quite as polished as a game like Titanfall. The movement is very sticky, you kind of just stick to surfaces when you get near them, and whilst that does make the game more casually accessible, it means that you get moments where you'll be stuck to walls that you don't want to. The amount of times I died because I would try and jump, all of a sudden my character sticks to the wall and starts wall running and my aim is all over the place and I can't then detach from the wall easily, just made it an absolute mess. And realistically, the game, much like Advanced Warfare, just favoured players with SCUF controllers. I mean, there is no dispute about this. If you have a SCUF controller or some control setup where you can keep your hands on the thumbsticks whilst jumping, you are a massive advantage. And it kind of meant that the game, whilst it still was only 60 quid to go and buy it, it kind of made it the price of entry of the game to properly enjoy it really was closer to £260 because you had to buy that modified controller to really get the most out of the movement. And that really did suck. It really annoyed me. And the fact that whilst jumping you can still have pretty much perfect accuracy, it just led to a lot of cheesy deaths, which I don't like. Now, admittedly, I never optimized the movement. I never mastered it. Partly because I was still using a standard PlayStation controller and I never changed the control setups to make jumping easier. But it wasn't a set of mechanics that I enjoyed overall. They kind of led to frustration. When I played boots on the ground style gameplay, which as you're seeing in the gameplay is how I play this game, I don't really use the advanced movement that often. When I'm playing that where it's just boots on the ground, it felt so much fun. It retains that old school COD feeling where it was just fun to go around and kill people and get on your kill streaks. That was what was really satisfying. And yet those deaths where I would suddenly get seemingly cheesed by someone who I was out of my field of view, or just sort of bunny hopped over an object that I wasn't expecting, or just sort of zipped around the corner or boost slid past me, it kind of led to some randomness and chaos, which didn't do it for me in this particular game. And then talking of pricing out, then it also came into the major controversy of supply drops in this game. At first, these were added in much like Advanced Warfare where players could earn them and then unlock cosmetic items. Then they added melee weapons, which at first didn't seem like a problem. I mean, players were dropping 300 quid to try and get these things and still getting nothing, which was kind of amusing. But it didn't really change the game at that point. Up until they started adding proper primary weapons into the supply drops, as well as all the other nonsense that they used to bloat them out. And they made it now so that players could buy them. And it just got ridiculous. I mean, the base roster of weapons were great in this game. They were really enjoyable to use. But when I go back and play it now, I'm up against these Master Prestige level 1000 players who have all of the weapons from the supply drop, so I'm all of a sudden getting killed by a grenade launcher that I didn't even know existed 2 weeks ago. And that's kind of frustrating, especially because the reason they didn't add grenade launchers into this game was because it would screw up the balance with the movement. And what do they go and do? They give one that people can go and buy. It's just ridiculous. And that was where the game kind of killed itself. Effectively, this is one of the few games that I've ever played where the post-launch content actually made the game worse. Adding content to this game genuinely just made it worse. When they added the DLC maps, the players that had bought them hated it because the matchmaking pool became that much smaller, and they genuinely started uninstalling the map packs just so they could get into games quicker and have a more fun, casual experience. Putting new weapons in the supply drops turned away so many players because players just weren't willing to put up with this anymore. We hated that in Advanced Warfare, and they just went and did it again. It just showed that they didn't actually care. And it's sad to say that this still wasn't the worst the monetization system in this got. Yet again, the worst this series came to, unfortunately, was under a Treyarch game. And whilst yes, it's perfectly valid to say that it was Activision's fault for forcing this upon them, but equally well, at this point, I would say that you can't ignore the fact that Treyarch management failed to just say no. At the end of the day, they are the ones making the game and implementing these things. They could have just said no, but as we saw, they just kept adding in more and more weapons, bloating out the supply drops to make them even harder to get, and it really just priced out a lot of players, as well as just reducing the overall enjoyment of the game. And that was a shame, because this game really revived the old school COD feeling. It was fun. You saw players like Drifter. I think that Black Ops 3 is one of the games where I've seen him the happiest on his live streams. It was just a fun game that introduced a load of positivity to the community, and then they kind of just pissed it all away with all these terrible decisions. But that being said, when I have gone back and replayed it, I did get to enjoy that sort of casual Call of Duty feeling again. I got to enjoy the good parts of this game, the amazing gunplay, the weapons in this game were fantastic, and as I said, they had so much variety. The Man of War was one of my favourites. You still got SMGs like the Kudo, which was very iconic because it was very versatile, but also still felt satisfying. The Vespa was just a meme cannon because of how fast it fired. And then you get weapons like the Brecci, which, no, just delete it. It's one of the most broken guns in COD history. But I just got to enjoy those aspects of the game again, and I did have some fun playing it. It is just a shame that this game really was ruined by all of the post-launch decisions for this game. But that being said, there was also zombies, which has for the longest time been a staple of the Treyarch games. In this game, the default map was Shadows of Evil, a map set in the 1920s in a sort of weird zombies parallel universe. The story at this point was getting pretty convoluted, but it was still vaguely interesting, and I loved the theme of the map. The map looked really cool, I loved the music behind it and sort of the dialogue. It was a really interesting theme for me. The only thing was, yet again, it suffered from adding stuff for the sake of adding stuff, and it really kind of reduced the enjoyment of the experience. They made it so that you could have weapon progression in all three modes on the game, in campaign, zombies, and multiplayer. And whilst this was okay, it meant you could have camo unlocks in zombies that you could then transfer over to multiplayer. That really didn't do it for me. I would have preferred a era-specific set of weapons, like we had in like Black Ops Zombies and Black Ops 2, where you had the old like Cold War and Nazi zombie weapons. I like that. Seeing those older weapons, it just has that weird gritty feel. I like it. It fits with the zombies theme. But having all the futuristic weapons kind of just reduced my enjoyment of this map. They did have a couple of era-specific ones like the bootlegger, but overall the weaponry available in this map just didn't quite fit the theme, and that was always a little bit of a sticking point for me. Then you also get the addition of the Gobblegums in the game, which will basically spend 100 credits and you get this free ability. I mean, at this point they've now changed it so the first one in each round is free, so you might as well spam it as much as you want. And it really was just adding things for the sake of adding things. All it served to do was to make the game a lot easier. And I can see partly where they're coming from, but that's the thing, for the really dedicated players, it just made it so that they would go and get the biggest, baddest Gobblegum so they could hit the highest rounds possible. But even for someone like me, who was still a pretty casual zombies player, it didn't really increase my enjoyment, and for the most part I didn't use them because I didn't want to. But then also in Shadows of Evil, the overall map structure was a little bit strange. I did like that there were 3 different areas you could go to. It felt like quite a large map, and that did make it quite fun. However, the way you progress through the map using the beast mode and then having to complete the summoning rituals to get to the pack-a-punch, it just felt like a very convoluted set of steps to actually just enjoy the map and just get the whole experience of the level. And it didn't quite capture the same fun as a map like Origins. Now later on in the game I did purchase the Zombies Chronicles expansion, where you got loads of remastered zombies map, partly because it would allow me to replay Origins. And the reason why I wanted to speak about these is because there is a very distinct comparison between the two. Because Origins also had a lot of challenges behind it. If you wanted to get the Pack-a-Punch, you had to turn on all the generators. If you wanted to get an improved melee, you had to fill up all the chests around the level. And you had a lot of complicated Easter eggs within the map. However, I found that they were a lot easier to track in Origins, and they were just more enjoyable to do. Completing the summoning rituals in Shadows of Evil didn't have the same enjoyment that I got when I played Origins and completing the activities in there. It just didn't capture that same enjoyment of doing the challenges. They kind of just felt like chores in this map, and it overall did reduce my enjoyment of the game. But that being said, the Zombies Chronicle expansion was fantastic for this game. The maps felt perfectly true to the original, it still kept that original feel, and going back and playing zombies without the bug that would mean you couldn't craft the zombie shield was just that much more fun. And I did have some enjoyment in the zombies mode, but yet again, just like the multiplayer, it did suffer from the fact of let's add shit for the sake of adding shit, and it just didn't improve the enjoyment of the game. So as you can probably tell from my overall thoughts on it, I'm not feeling overly positive now that I look back at the game. When I play it now, it does just highlight all the issues it had, especially the issues brought in after the launch of the game. The game had so much potential. It was a really fun game that really united the community again and reinvigorated that love for casual Call of Duty. But for me, it was also the game that ended it. I had my fun playing this game. It was enjoyable whilst I played it. Going for the Dark Ops challenges was something that I really enjoyed, and having those in the game was a fantastic addition to the series. But from this point onwards, I no longer wanted to be involved in Call of Duty. The absolute milking of the player base through supply drops showed no signs of stopping, and at this point it didn't feel like they were making changes that were actually beneficial to the franchise. As I said in Black Ops 3, they just kept seeming to add things just to say they've added it. And it took a number of years until Modern Warfare where the game really started to actually reinvigorate my interest in the series, because it actually made changes that looked modern. It actually made changes that looked like they made sense within the overall gameplay. And so that was why I eventually left Call of Duty. I did enjoy playing Black Ops 3, but ultimately it was sort of the death of casual COD for me. I no longer wanted to play that same 6v6 style that the franchise had been known for, and it really marked a turning point in my taste for games, as I started to enjoy games with more depth, more strategy, and a little bit more competitive elements, but we'll be covering that in future videos. But I am interested to hear what you all thought of this game. Did you enjoy it? Were you turned off by the aggressive monetization of this game and the post-launch support, or were you just someone who loved it no matter what? Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, if you have enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe if you want to see more of them. I've been the guy from the Gamertag, and I'll see you on another video.